shot. Double shot Saturday. Welcome to the Ackerman Daily Show, your daily dose of things you need to know, and probably some things you don't. And always a few things you don't need to know. Good evening. It is Saturday the 8th, and always getting used to this new streaming thing and slamming things together. It's getting a little bit easier. Figuring it out. We'll hope, I hope that by the time a few people end up showing up and watching or maybe interacting, that I'll have all of this technology figured out by then. This is one of the more difficult things I've attempted in my life. And I've attempted a lot of difficult things. But couldn't make the broadcast work yesterday. Still have kids, still have a dog, still have all these things that I'm tending to, and we're trying to work around those things. But how's everybody doing this evening? All, I don't know, two of you. Guess we'll just keep doing this. I'm just going to pretend. You remember when you were young or a kid or whenever this happened, and you were given the advice when you go on stage to speak with to speak in front of a group of people, you're supposed to imagine the audience naked, and it will make you feel more comfortable because, I don't know, for some reason you'll feel like the audience should be embarrassed instead of you. I never quite understood that, because I remember the first time I got up, I used to skip school on the day that you would give your report in front of the class because I was deathly afraid of it. I was deathly afraid of it because I was a big stutterer. Still do every once in a while. You'll probably catch it now that I'm just open, and letting everybody know. It does show up every once in a while. But I remember, going to school that day and like not being able to get out of this book report. And I got up, to give my presentation in front of the class. And I pictured everybody naked, and it made me more nervous. So I don't know. Don't do that if, I don't know, give it a try. But what I decided to do this evening, and I hope I can get through this one in just an hour, because this is really kind of a personal topic, and we'll eventually, hopefully, get through some of these tougher topics. Although I do want to make sure that we circle back, and my whole point of doing this is a fewfold. Is one, I'm ready to join a larger conversation. I'm ready to get out there and really get my voice into the national discussions. I think it's going to be important going forward to have, I think we have this opportunity. All of us do. We all can stream. We all can project our voices in ways that we've never really been able to do. Really, it's been controlled by mainstream media. If you got your voice on TV, well, you were pretty lucky. You were paid pretty well. But I think what we figured out is the voice on mainstream media isn't necessarily the voice of the person who's on TV. A lot of times it's the voice of the corporation, or it's the voice of the government, or whatever manipulative cycle process is happening at that point. And I started this, one, because it was just time. Big reason for doing a lot of this was the injuries that I ended up having. 3 car accidents in 3 years, a lifetime of back problems. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to move around. And, all of my career has basically been on the road, traveling, whether it be outside sales or traveling sales, or living out of a suitcase, living out of a Hilton hotel. I was a Hilton Diamond member for like 8 years in a row, which, if you don't know what Hilton Diamond member is you get upgrades no matter what. It was because of all the travel I did. And so I knew that this was eventually going to be the next step in what I was going to do. There's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of drama, a lot of chaos in the last 8 to 10 years. I guess I'll call my 40s a real learning experience. A lot of stuff happened to me that I will share as we progress through this, because I think it's going to be important to not only look at what's taking place in our country, in the world, but it's going to be good to discuss that. It's going to be good to share. Right now, all we're getting is these little snippets. Our kids are getting TikTok. They're getting these little 60-second videos. Some are propaganda, some aren't. Some people think one message is propaganda. Some people think another message is propaganda. We're all on kind of a different page, is kind of the way I look at it. We are interpreting things differently. We are getting the information from different sources. I think it's great that we have social media and we have this platform where people can put out, their interpretations. When I see something go down, hot topics right now, or what's going on with Elon Musk and Trump and, in our government. And since the first President Trump impeachment, I really felt this important mission of really making sure that I am getting the real story. There's a few different places that I go, there's about, I don't know, 8 or 10 different feeds or channels or locations that I get my information, that I take in that information. And it's not only important for me to do that because in order for me to bring an objective, opinion here that will hopefully stimulate some more discussion and drill down and granular understanding of a topic, I also will be doing that professionally as I get my practice off the ground, my financial planning, and I won't get too much into that now. But if I'm going to be managing money and trading and making decisions, with people's money, I want to make sure that the decisions that I am making are legitimate, because I'll be making longer term decisions or short term decisions based upon that information that I take in. So I really, really take it seriously when it comes down to, is my information good? Because if my opinion is based on false facts or false narratives or anything that's not true, I expect people to call me out for it. And I expect to be called out for it. I'm not here to force my opinion down anybody's throat. What I'm here to do is to hopefully build a following of people that want to accomplish more, think forward a little bit more, use our critical thinking a little bit more, and try to get away from the dramatic, reactionary. There's still a lot of that happening everywhere. You see it just, somebody will put hey, look at this, and then you'll get all this toxic, just blah. It just feels like, what it feels like when you get that. It just kind of feels like, that's what it feels like to me. It literally just every time. And I've got a topic tonight that I think it's very relevant right now. And I think it's an important one that we just kind of remember. We got to remember where we came from. We got to remember the environments we all were raised in, how we did things at one time, how we're doing them now, why we're doing them like we're doing them now. And I just think it's important to stay grounded. Now, remember, the only thing that we don't do here, this is the only thing where I'm just going to, hit the dump button or hit the no thanks button is if it ever turns just, I don't do toxic here. I don't do, slanderous, if you have an opinion that differs from mine, or if I have an opinion that differs from yours, that I just ask that there's no name calling and just calling somebody stupid, or, everybody's really good. Everybody's really good at the sarcastic, underhanded, bleh. Let's just try not to do that. Let's just try to be really super respectful, really super to the point. And hopefully we can get some good discussions here, because we need it. We need people communicating. So tonight's show, what did I call it? I called it a few different things in a few different places. I think healing the next generation. We've all come from a place that is different. We all operate in our own way. We all process trauma and criticism and, accomplishment, or we all have different risk tolerances. We all have different beliefs. I try to keep a pretty open mind. I mean, I think there's a reason why I'm like that, which has to do, with my upbringing and where I came from and the environment that I was raised in. And I think that's any being. So what I'm going to try to talk about here tonight is, I think I told some of you, I kind of forget some of the other shows. I've got so much going on right now, and I haven't really isolated a good way to kind of keep myself on a linear narrative here, because I don't want to make this confusing. But I think I've told some of you about what I've got going on right now with this situation, where I've built the studio, the place I'm living right now, what I'm doing. I'm making a real big comeback here from a pretty rough last 4 or 5 years. I have had no shortage of, how do I put it? No shortage of drama, no shortage of excitement, no shortage of, my first wife used to say that I was addicted to chaos. I was addicted to drama because it always followed me. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But I reconnected with an old friend of mine that he owns this house, really big, old, like probably should be on the historic registry. Owns a house here in Washington State. I'm not going to say exactly where it is, but he needed some help. He needed some help getting this place. There's a lot of deferred maintenance. The place was built in like the early 30s. I think the lumber was shipped over from Europe when it was originally built. And it's a cool place, but it's falling apart. It's old. And he needed help. Now, he's got an interesting situation. He is married. His wife lives in California. She has a house in California. He lives here. His kids are here. His grandkids are here. I think, like his wife, her kids are in California. So when I took on this project with him, and you got to kind of understand this guy. How am I going to explain this? So I've known him most of my life. I think I first met him when I was 15 years old. He was the stepfather of a friend of mine that I played a lot of golf with as a kid, played a lot of golf with as adults. We were members at the same golf course for like 17 years together. Played golf like once or twice a week with this guy for, 12, 15 years or more. Really considered him a best friend. And so this is his ex-stepfather that I'm living in the apartment over the garage. And what you got to understand about this guy is he's a little different in the sense that his communication can be a little off-putting.
for our whole life. He just says things that make you go, what? Why did he say that? What? Like, is he just a prick? What is that?
Well, I've always understood that kind of quirkiness about him as being a little bit on the spectrum. And as I think we've all seen in the last 4, 6, 10 years, whatever, how long it's been, I think we're all kind of seeing just how prevalent, some of these spectrum, whether you call it autism spectrum, Asperger's. I mean, I don't know what it is. He's never been diagnosed. We've talked about it like very briefly, but I've always kind of cut him a little bit of slack, not taking the stuff personally. That's really hard. He's a very critical guy, extremely critical. And you kind of just have to blow that stuff off. And I've always done so. So when we entered this kind of agreement together, I had gone and wanted to interview him as I was kind of starting to put this podcast or this show together. I wanted to interview him. He's a commercial real estate broker. He's been, his whole career, been pretty successful. I've always looked up to him as being a pro in that area. And I've also really, kind of considered him a mentor in the area of playing golf. He's been a highly competitive golfer, plays in a lot of the amateur tournaments, state amateurs, U.S. amateur qualifiers, a good golfer. Somebody who I looked up to, like always chasing him. You always got to have people in your life that you want to, that you can chase, that you can give a little bit of competition to. And, that's kind of been our relationship. We've never really been that close, but we've always seen each other at the golf course and just always interacted with one another. And now we've known each other for 35 years. So, there was kind of this mutual trust. So when we entered this deal, my understanding was, his wife would come up from California every other weekend. So she was here about twice a month from Friday to early Monday morning when she would fly back to work. And she's an optometrist in, I think, Orange County, which was fine. He was never here. That's why nothing ever got done. He was always traveling, playing golf. And they're 60, 65. They've got plenty of money. So they kind of get a caretaker. I can take care of the animals, watch the house, and in return, I can put the studio here, get this off the ground. It was a real symbiotic relationship. That's how it was pitched, and I know this guy did a lot of work with the Boys and Girls Club, and he kind of got the short end of the stick as, they were trying to get rid of, I think, just trying to get rid of all the white guys, there for a while, and he says some things that sometimes can get him in trouble, so they ended up ousting him from there, which I thought was really lame. But, I took this on, and early on, he asked me, he said, you're not, like, how healthy are you? Are you, you're not like in a depression or, you're stable, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's been a rough last few years, but, I told him my story and what I've gone through. And a few episodes ago, I explained that story to you all about my family and what I saw happen to my mom and my grandma, and just a lot of betrayal, a lot of back turning, a lot of, I don't know, I guess being conservative in a blue state just doesn't pay anymore. And the first few days I came here to just kind of work, he was obviously unsure of my skills. He didn't know what I knew about carpentry and building. And as far as he's concerned, I've always worked a professional, like a white collar career. So how would I know any of this? So as he was kind of feeling me out to see what I knew how to do, the first day, just like massive amount of criticism, just complaint, and like after the second day, I finally just went, whoa, knock it off. What are you doing? This is not, you can't communicate with me that way. That's not appropriate. Like, no, boundaries, guy, come on. Like, what the hell? What was your relationship with your mother like? Tell me about your relationship with your father. And he I'm like, you need to tell me what the hell happened to you that makes you think it's okay to talk to people like you talk to people. And he, oh, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. And we worked it out. And I'm like, whoa, dude, if you want me to work for you, I will work for you. But you have to speak respectfully. You can't just belittle and criticize. And like, what are you doing? So that was kind of the dynamic that happened really early on. But he always worked it out. He always reeled it back in. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So I uproot myself from my last situation where I had it totally set up, where I could do this, get it set up, so I move my stuff here, lose that opportunity. And as soon as I get here, about 2 weeks into it, his wife's showing up, and I suddenly start to realize, like, oh no, like his wife, she's a toxic. And what I mean by a toxic is, first of all, she's a regular drinker, and I've got a lot of experience with regular drinkers, especially the ones that are highly critical, and their evening buzz turns into critical sesh, where it's just giving everybody a piece of critical everything, just in your face, your fault. And I told him, I said, hey man, I can't deal with that right now. Like I thought you said this was like twice a month, Well, it turned into more time, but it was fine. They were still gone a lot. So I just kind of hid out. When she would come here, it would turn into like, okay, you need to get your stuff out of the freezer. You need to do this. You need to do that. Before she was here, he was just like any other friend. Like, okay, here's where I keep the this and here's where I keep the that. Here's the washer and dryer. It's like open door policy. It's like two friends living in the same house, which I've done multiple times. But then when his wife was here, it was like, okay, you got to be quiet. You can't do this. You can't do that. And that's where I started to get kind of that little bit of trauma. Like, oh my God, what are we walking on eggshells here? What's up? Like, what's going on? Like, his grandkids were coming over on the regular. These two twin boys that are just the cutest, freaking greatest kids you've ever met in your life. He'd hand off one to me and I'd show him how to build something, or we'd do a project and clean stuff up. I told him that, my kids need a lot of support right now. And he liked the fact that I was closer to my kids here. And, I really got the impression that we wanted to make like a positive, encouraging, kind of push people up environment for everybody here. So everybody could heal and, become more confident. Like, that's what I was all about. I was not about negativity and criticism. And like, that's what I've been doing. That's, what my relationships were. And I wasn't into that. Well, there was kind of nothing, I guess, that could be done. There was a night that he was having his grandkids and his daughter and his son-in-law over, and they were all having dinner. And, even though he's been married to this woman since 2013. He hasn't really, like it's not just one big happy family. Everybody hangs out, it's kind of I'm sure like everybody else's families, complicated. I get it. Well, on this particular evening, the wife or the husband, his son-in-law, didn't make dinner. And he had just told me to hide out, but now he's calling me saying, hey, do you want to join us for dinner? So I'm like, sure. What a great way to get to know everybody a little better. Now, I already know his daughter. I've known her since she was born, but not well. So I go join, and I figure out the reason I got invited is because the son-in-law didn't show up. So I look at him, and he's just like, he looks like he's about to explode. I have no idea why. I sit down next to his wife, and the two twins are kind of acting out. They're not doing what they're told. They're just kind of, doing what kids do when they seeing something they don't like or in an environment they're not happy with. I don't know. But I sat down and the kids were not eating. And I had just spent like a couple days with them, and I thought we had a really good relationship. And I just said, hey, guys, why don't you show me how you eat your dinner? Just not thinking anything of it. And they go, okay. And they just start eating their dinner and sitting there doing what they were asked. I was like, oh, wow. Hey, thanks. Thanks for listening. Well, I think that is what flipped the switch in the heads of, especially it for sure flipped the switch in the head of his wife, because after that day, she was now coming up like every chance she had. 3 nights a week. Every week. Grandkids were suddenly not hanging out with me anymore. Now it was like them. She wanted the grandkids hanging out with her. And so again, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep working on these projects, doing all this stuff. And I've done a lot of work here. This house has been ripped to shreds by termites or ants, and it's got rot everywhere. So I'm jacking this place up and, fixing it from the inside out. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm also doing this work. So I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning to work on this project, to get this off the ground. I had talked with him about being here no longer than a year, and everything's happening as planned, but suddenly things are just getting more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. Suddenly all the work I'm doing is suddenly not right, and I can hear some yelling and screaming on the other side of the house. And so, long story short, I am now in a situation where I'm just being asked, like, okay, this isn't working out. You need to beat it. Oh, okay. So hold on a second. So our 35-year friendship and like me not having a lease and me, not writing all this stuff, that me just taking a handshake deal from you, that we're going to do this? Like, well, what happened to our like friendship and our relationship? That's not cool. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I have always been one of those people that's just like, you got to deal with what you got to deal with. It is what it is. So I'm going to deal with it. But it got me thinking, it's time to really look at, like, what are we dealing with here? What are we dealing with here? Well, what we're dealing with here is kind of a toxic relationship. And there's many of them out there. Many marriages. You hear all these things on TV about, the women want to vote for this and the men want to vote for this. And I mean, we've all heard it. Men, I think I heard this last election that men are always controlling their wives' votes, which I call BS. Men do not control their wives' votes. In fact, women control just about every marriage that I have ever had experience with. Personally, my marriages... Hold on one second. Lester? No. I need some time, okay? I'm sorry. Hey, Brody? Come get Lester. Come get Lester, please. Sorry, everybody. Doing the show from live in my house with everybody home, so... Go. So, where was I? Let's talk about dynamic. You've heard my story. You've heard where I come from. Toxic mother, alcoholic mother, angry mother, very angry. Very, 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 very angry. I mean, she was, how do I describe, let me see how I can describe my mother. I forgot the first slide I put in here. This was one of the first girls I ever thought was cute in my neighborhood. I was like 4 years younger than her. But what are, speaking of my mother, how you go from this to that is a lot of years of hard drinking and being really angry. I mean, really angry. I'm almost the kind of person who, And if anybody ever sees this show or sees this specific show who knew my mother, you will know that my mom used to call on the phone and she could talk for hours. But to give her that much time, you knew you were going to deal with a lot of anger. This is my mother and her mother and father. That's my grandmother on the left and my grandfather on the left side. I believe that is my mother right there underneath holding my grandmother's hand. My Uncle Mike to the right of him. Everybody's got guns. This must have been like 1955 or 6 maybe. There's my grandparents again with me. You know, that if you want to have a little idea of what kind of a kid I was, there it is, hiding behind grandma. There was a camera out. I was an incredibly shy, quiet, introverted kid. And I think a lot of that had to do with my mother because she was incredibly critical, always. And I never understood it because my grandparents, you know, grandfather was so kind and gentle and, you know, soft spoken and just picked his words. He was such a good dude. In fact, the only thing that I kind of got irritated with him ever in my life was the fact that he wouldn't let my mom kind of hit rock bottom. He wouldn't let her kind of have the consequence for her drinking and for her anger. I mean, I used to sit at my grandparents' house when I was little, 3, 4, 5. And my uncle, my mom's older brother, he would show up sometimes drunk. Usually, I don't know what time it was, but I remember it was always dark. He would show up and just scream at them. I mean, just scream at my grandparents. I would never hear their voices. Or if I did hear their voices, it would just be like, well, Mike, it's, you know. And then he would just scream at them some more. So it was very similar. My mom and her older brother, Mike, were kind of the screamers. They were the angry ones. But I never understood how they got that way with my grandparents just being so gentle and calm and never heard them raise their voice. And the only thing that I can think of is that there was some trauma that we just don't know about. And trauma does a lot of things. Trauma when you're a child, when you're little, when your parents are supposed to protect you and you're supposed to be kept safe, you know, have this safe environment for everybody to operate in. If you're not safe, if you're put in scary situations or situations that would give you anxiety out of fear, it'll change your personality completely. It'll change who you are for your whole life. And that goes for any creature I'm confident of. This is what I think. This is a rescue puppy. Rainy. She's the little brown one on the right. We got her as a little tiny puppy. Puppy mill. Lester, my dog, helped me raise her. Now, you would think that she would eventually kind of like, maybe not submit to Lester, but at least like show like some respect to him. And he earned it at times. But she was raised in I think she was the runt of the litter. I don't think the litter had any food. I think that Rainy, the little red dog, and I have a video in my channel called Don't Rescue Working Dogs that kind of chronicles the whole raising of this puppy from, you know, however many weeks old when we got her, when she was just this little fluff ball. But I think she mainly got to eat the turds from the other puppies for the first few weeks of her life because that's what she liked to eat. I mean, it was the most difficult puppy raise I've ever done in my life. I mean, and then everywhere we went, it didn't matter where we were, she right now is keeping Lester out of this bedroom at my stepmom's house. I was just, in case you missed that, see it again. She wouldn't let Lester back in the room. She's like, no, this is where Dad sleeps. You're not going to sleep there. That's just the way it is. And that's kind of how she barged her way. She had trauma. She didn't have, Lester came from a breeder down in California where he got to probably, with all of his siblings, he got to suckle mom and he got to, get all that comfort and got to eat dog food and got to play outside with the other working dogs on the sheep ranch and had this kind of normal puppy childhood, adolescence. Where Rainey, she was raised in chaos. She was raised in fear. She was raised where people, every time you put a shovel on the ground and try to scoop dog poop with it, she'll attack it. Literally attack it like a wolf. Just so trauma at a young age will do things to you. It will shape your personality. That's a belief of mine. We are products of our environment. We are products of watching our parents behave, interact. We pick up traits from other people as we watch them in life. I mean, I did it my whole life. I looked up to I looked up to some teachers, my football coach, friends' parents who I felt were normal parents who gave time and would talk to their kids where, my home life was okay, I just want to get to my room, shut my door, do my thing. My dad was never home. He left a gas card. Thankfully, he had a boat that, we had, which I was just off using the boat and just meeting people and, keeping myself out there in the world as much as I could. So just know that trauma, that programming is where we get a lot of our reactions, how we interact, all that. And that's what we're dealing with right now. That's what we're dealing with how we're all processing the traumas of, our new presidency, our election, changes are afoot again. And there's a lot of nefarious bullshit going on, that we're going to need to talk through. We're not at the end of it. We're at the very beginning of it. And we are going to need to talk through this stuff and be able to talk through this stuff. So that's a really long way of kind of carving out what this is going to turn into. This isn't my main focus. I mean, I just want to get conversation going. I've got a lot more fun stuff that I want to get going with that everybody can take part in if things pan out. But if I can help everybody just have a little different perspective, I think we need to treat each other a little better. I do. I think we need to treat our spouses, our kids to us. Everybody needs to step it up a notch and just start treating everybody a little bit better. We have fallen into a pit of hypocrisy and toxicity and criticism and the weaponization of shame and the weaponization of guilt. I've seen it all. I've been through it all. And it wasn't until I just decided that I was done with relationships for good. That's it. I made a commitment after my second marriage, which, if you go back a couple of episodes where I explain everything that happened to me over the last 10 years, you'll see why. And I think what happened to me over the last 10 years is something that we need to just make sure doesn't happen anymore. I know why it happened. I've rationalized why it happened, and I think I've really, in a critical fashion, understood why it happened. But we can't let that happen again. We have to move this thing back to a place of more respect for one another. We owe it to ourselves. I owe it to my grandfather and my grandmother. On my mom's side of the family, they raised me, and I feel like I'm more like them than anybody else. I didn't have a lot of respect for my parents. That's I think, why I didn't do real well in school, because that was what they would just always tell me to do. You know, they needed me to do well in school for their own pride. Because if I didn't do well in school, it reflects poorly on the parents. Can anybody relate to that? Did any mothers or fathers out there feel like, God, if my kid doesn't go to college, I'm going to be a failure. If my kid doesn't accomplish this, I'm going to be a failure. You got to take that out of the equation. If your kid's happy, that's all I want. All I want is for my children to be happy. Enjoy what they do. Enjoy whatever it is they choose. If they choose college, great. I think college needs a revamp. Okay, if my kid ends up going and spending $80,000 on school and all he comes out with is an indoctrination into like protesting for protecting terrorists, I would consider that a waste of college education. Okay, I mean, I think you go to college for a couple things, for interaction, for social, for learning, but I just want them to be happy. So let's go through a couple things here. Now, I'm going to tell you this story as kind of I'm a man. Now, I know it's the impression I'm getting is there are, my interpretation of things is from a male perspective. Okay? It is what it is. And I look at how mothers, I was pretty resentful of my mother for a lot of years. I was. She was not nice to me. I really tried to save her life there in the end. I couldn't, but it wasn't my responsibility to do in the end. But I really wanted her around a little bit longer. Let's look at a couple things. Using AI has been a godsend. Now, who has ever heard of Mommy Dearest? The Joan Crawford story. I want you to watch this real quick. This was one of my mother's favorite movies. All right, you ready for this? Whoops, not the right one. There it is. Oh. Whoops. I screwed that up. Okay. What did I mess up this time? Anyway, that scene from Mommy Dearest, the no wire hangers, that is probably the closest depiction of my mother on the big screen. Now, she didn't wear masks, but when she would get a certain amount of intoxicated, she would start screaming at everybody with whatever was on her mind. And it's not fun. And if you ever read Joan Crawford's daughter, I think this movie is told in her daughter's perspective. Why is this not working now? It's suddenly just not working. Let's try this again.
You're being crazy. You're being crazy.
Nope. It's just not going to do it. It's just not going to do it. Well, I better have the other ones. You got to be kidding me. Let's try this.
Listen to me. You're being crazy.
Oh, I totally screwed it up. Anyway, I had these great clips all set up to show how television has basically depicted how they have.
Oh, what?
Okay, let's try this again.
Hang on!
not working now?
Hanger's doing in this closet what I told you? No, what?
Okay, so that was a depiction of my mother. Now, this next one is from Everybody Loves Raymond. Now, this is the mother-in-law. This is kind of your classic mother-in-law, passive-aggressive, no boundaries, that kind of woman. The underhanded. So, did you get that one? The boundary. You know, you're coming over to your daughter-in-law's house. She's cooking fish, so I decided to cook the real dinner. No boundaries. That is probably a perfect description of my ex-mother-in-law. And her trauma, oh my God. She will sit down and talk to you for an hour and a half and tell you about her trauma, about how she was beaten as a child, how her mother was straight from Germany. And basically what I took it as was that she has a right, that she has earned the fact that she is going to just act inappropriately and have no boundaries. The next one. Anybody ever see Malcolm in the Middle? Anybody ever know a mom like this? So the kids find a videotape that proves that their mother was right, and they destroy it. Now, how about this? I'm not going to say whose mother I think this is. Oh, yeah? Anybody know that mother? I know a couple mothers who, took no shit from their kids. I mean, my mom was one of those, but I never really tried to give much shit back to my kid or, to my mother, because I just avoided her at all cost. Tried to make her happy. That's where my personality was formed, was I just want my mother to be happy. Don't yell at me. Don't criticize me. Let's do something fun together. But I could never get that. But then there's just that kind of tough mother. The tough mother that's, actually does follow through with the restrictions. You're restricted. That's it. It's over. You know that there's no getting it back. Now remember that. Being tough, actually following through with the consequence, I think Malcolm's mother was probably the one who ended up with the best kids in the end. And then there's the Goldberg's mother. Anybody recognize that mother? Now, I don't necessarily know this TV mom, I think, is a cross between my ex-mother-in-law and a friend's mom. See, the mother that thinks very highly of herself, but their family is actually, that's probably the healthiest family. Even if they scream at one another, at least they're communicating. I believe that a family that communicates and at least gets their feelings off their chest, at least is able to express their feelings without the fear of repercussions, that I think is the most healthy family. What kind of mother do you have? And then there's everybody's favorite mother. Now, why do you think that show was so successful for so long? Because that show essentially depicts what a lot of our childhoods were like. Mom and dad, just kind of passive aggressive, slightly toxic, insinuated they didn't love one another, insinuated whatever. But the Bundys were kind of the carved out family from middle America. So this isn't all of them by any stretch. I just pulled a few. I kind of threw this together at the last minute, actually. Like I've done everything for this thing so far. Eventually we're going to get off and really truck this thing and do something that'll look really good because I'll get better at it. But the tech is a little bit hard. So depending upon what sort of mother or relationship you had with your mother, that's going to determine what your relationship is with your spouses. Now, when I was a kid, I had so much there was never any violence at home. I like to say that I would have rather just been kind of slapped around a little bit than been criticized and just verbally abused for my life. You can really tell when a person has kind of taken a lot of critical abuse, verbal abuse as a child, I think, because they're extraordinarily sensitive to any criticism, anything that resembles criticism, anything that looks like, anything that could anywhere even be construed as criticism, you have pushback. And we're seeing a lot of that today. A lot. Why I think we're having that today? Well, people used to stay married. Our grandparents, Gen X, our grandparents did not get divorced. They stayed married. They fought through. They stuck together for the kids. They stuck together. For whatever reason, they didn't get divorced. Maybe it was thought of as like a sin. I don't know. But then their kids, our parents, the baby boomers, they started getting a little bit more into divorce, didn't they? I mean, how many people do you know who are divorced? I had a buddy once say he's going to get a law degree because if he gets a law degree and specializes in divorce, he knows that 1 out of every 2 people he knows is going to need his help at some time. I mean, I was married twice. I got divorced twice. That's why I'm never getting married again. And it's nothing against women. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Society has transitioned to a place right now, at least, that seems like it's very, very toxic and evil, and just, it's who can carpet bomb with the most bombs, who can cause massive amounts of destruction. That's what things seem like to me these days. It's really, really important that I think we understand. A lot of these, there's some shows now, and because of where society's transitioned, even some shows you don't even see anymore. Like things are suddenly not, we're not allowed to say certain things or expose a few, certain comedy, I guess, is dead. There's no new music coming out. There's no good movies coming out. Why is that? Well, my guess is it's because we're just too messed up.
people are too broken. People are too, drug addiction is rampant. Alcoholism, I think, is rampant. Levels that it's never been. We are as unhealthy as a society as I think we've ever been in our lifetimes. We didn't have political differences in the 80s and the 90s. Like I didn't even know who, I couldn't even have began to classify who would be a Democrat or who would be a Republican. I wouldn't even really know. I know that I really wanted, I knew that my dad's parents, my paternal grandparents, and that whole side of the family, I knew that they were probably the total epic definition of what like right-wing conservative Christian values are. They were the kind of people that they used their shame and criticism and toxicity holding a Bible and reciting things from the Bible. Reciting, like, it was constant. It was at dinner. It was, have you gone to church? Have you gone to Sunday school? Why aren't you going to church more? Why aren't you doing this? I mean, it was all shaming and asking, hey, how you doing? I remember one time going to see my grandfather, and it was like, I hadn't seen him in a while. He wasn't my favorite guy because he was kind of a scary guy when I was a kid. He used to make me pee my pants by yelling at me on the golf course when I was with my cousin and we were just being kids. And I remember just like, oh my God, why is he yelling at me? And oh my God, I'm peeing my pants. I mean, it's like, it was that kind of guy. But then I got a little older and, saw him a little bit more as a human, as he got a little, more elderly and, just a little less intimidating, I'd want to have conversations with him, but it was always come back to, how about Jesus? How about this? And it was such an in-your-face religious shaming expedition that his treating me that way programmed me to think, okay, that's it. When I grow up, I'm not going to church. There's too much shame and judgment there. I don't want to live in shame and judgment land. I want to live in like having fun land. I want to live in water skiing and snowboarding and skateboarding and building things and doing fun stuff land. That's what I wanted to live in. And I'm going to have a partner that I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. And we're going to be friends. We're not going to be enemies. We're not going to yell at each other. We're not going to like teach our kids how to alienate parent. We're going to like raise good kids. I mean, I didn't want kids to begin with. And what I found out was all the things I agreed with my wife on. I once heard the saying that when a man marries a woman, he is hoping that she never changes. But when a woman marries a man, she's working day one to change him into the man that she wants. I didn't believe it. I told people, no, that's not it. That's not true. Not my wife. I married the cool girl. I married everybody likes her. She's fun. She hung out with everybody. Like, no, this could be great. Well, no, now I pretty much think that's true. That a man marries a woman hoping she's never going to change, and a woman marries a man from day one is trying to change him into the person that she wants. And in my opinion, marriage was all about control. Who's in control? And I never wanted that. And what I did to combat that was I always just gave up control. Great. Here you go. You have all the money. You take care of everything. You do this. I'll make all the money and just give it to you. That's great. Perfect. That's what I did. And then it all got spent. And I got blamed for it. And then it turned into, well, wait a minute. You wanted the control. Now you're going to blame me for, like, what are you talking about? Well, that's where I started to get called gaslighter and narcissist. And suddenly, when things get out of control, that's where the whole, and I think we all know what gaslighting feels like now. We've been gaslit as an entire society for the last 6 years or 8 or 10 or however long. But really, these last 4 to 5 years,
if you come from a toxic environment where parents are using these tricks of the trade, you recognize what's going on better than anybody. It's almost like you get PTSD watching the news these days because they're just gaslighting us. They're just telling us that what our own eyes are seeing, what our own guts are telling us are true, is not true. And that, for me, sets me into like, oh God, that's trauma. That's where my trauma comes in. Like, no, you don't gaslight me. You don't get to treat me like that, be a hypocrite. No, it's not how it works. So, you know, and then my dad, you know, I gotta say this, you know, it's dad pulled a fast one. You know, my dad was around only in little spurts. You know, he always was like, I'm working too hard. I'm the working man. I'm bringing home the money. I got to go to work. Well, he did work. Well, it turns out he was doing more than just work when he was at work. I didn't care when I was a kid because, you know, we still had food on the table and we still had money to spend. You know, my mom wasn't broke. He was generous with money, but he weaponized money. He'd be generous and then he wouldn't be generous. He'd be like, yeah, okay, here, I'm going to help you out. And then okay, great. But then you get halfway through what he's helping you out with and he finds a reason that he can just yank it and say, nope, sorry, it's over. And then I learned that was another tactic. That is, you know, another gaslight. That is another, you know, form of manipulation that you don't really figure out until you're older. You don't figure out until you have the experience to kind of process all this stuff and go, what just happened? And I hope you guys, like, doing all of this, telling you guys all of this stuff about like my childhood and what I dealt with. And I'm hoping, because this is all the stuff that over the last 2-3 years, I've really processed and gone through like, oh, okay. You know, I haven't had a therapist, but I've had many therapists. You know, during my first marriage, we had 9 different therapists that we saw, and every single one got fired after X amount of time. And the reason they got fired was this is what I was told. I was told that I manipulated the therapist into making our problems look like they weren't my fault. How do you answer that? Okay. Can we go into the next therapist and start with that? Like, let's say, hey, we're seeing you. We've seen 5 other therapists. Can we at least start and say the last 5, I supposedly have manipulated them into making me not the problem. So can we start with the next therapist like that? And then I pretty much came to the conclusion that all therapists are just in the business of keeping their therapy clients coming, not really solving any problems, not really getting at the real problems, avoiding the real problems so they can keep their book full of appointments for money. I kid you not. Find me a therapist. Tell me a therapist that you think nails it. I think I could help people through marriage counseling better than therapists. Because I'll just get straight to the point. I can identify what is happening in somebody's marriage now as to, yep, see a problem there. Know exactly what's going on. That's why what's happening right here, right now, where I'm living, seeing what's going on with the control, with the nope, you're going to do it my way or the highway. I know exactly what's going on because I've been through it. There's not much that can fool me at this point because I've been through it. So getting, you know, these last few years, I've been a little bit estranged from my father too. He's been kind of off in his own world. My dad left my mom when I was a junior in high school. And here's the kicker. He married a friend's mom. Yeah. My friend and I got in trouble together a couple years before they got married, which brought them into the parents' meeting. And the parents' meeting introduced my dad and my friend's mom into a situation where my dad was on the outs with my mom because of her alcoholism. And, we did the Betty Ford Clinic and to try to save the marriage. And I think that was just a show for my grandparents. But anyway, well, at that particular time, I guess my friend's mom and her husband were on the outs too. So they immediately just started seeing each other and keeping it secret from us. And anyway, long story short, we had this new step family, me and my sister and 3 step brothers who were like already friends because we'd all hung out. We all lived on the same body of water. We all went to the same schools, and it was just like weird. Okay, well, I guess we're all living together now. Because I kind of didn't live at my mom's house anymore. And my sister was, she was 5.5 years younger than me. And by the time, I was probably 15 when that happened. So she was 10 or 11. And at that point, my mom was not my sister at the age that she was at was not good for her to be with my mom. She was much better off with my stepmom. My stepmom is a sweetheart. She's amazing. I love her. I consider her my mom. They're no longer married, but I still consider her my mom. I don't necessarily know if I consider my stepbrothers my brothers because there's a lot of animosity and a lot of resentment and a lot of, I guess, pent up things there because I kind of played peacekeeper. I was the voice that talked to everybody and kept everybody, communicating. If there was any family drama, I would talk to everybody and work it out. And just over the years, my dad made a lot of bad decisions. He didn't drink. He was not a drinker. So he would always be like, oh, we got to get your mom to stop drinking or else I'm going to have to divorce her. See, what my dad's addiction was gambling. He was a gambling addict. Lost his company for it. Now he'll say that's, BS. He'll say he got screwed. He'll say he got taken advantage of and this and that. Well, it's sure he might have got taken advantage of and screwed a little bit, but he did because he put himself in that situation because he lost so much money. He'll never admit it. He ended up basically gambling and losing all the money that my stepmom got in her divorce, starting with her house, then her mother's house, her mother's car, her 401k. My dad gambled it all away. Now, it wasn't just him robbing her. She let him, okay? She's the kind of personality that's just like, oh, well, whatever. He loves me. I mean, my dad was good to her. He treated her well. And now you kind of see why he treated her well, because he was basically spending all of her money. Everything. And after he spent it all, he divorced her. In the middle of the night, she didn't have an attorney. She didn't have anything. He just divorced her. And at that time, I said one thing to my dad. I said, Dad, if you're going to do this, the only thing that I ask is that you pay her for the rest of her life, something that she can live on. And if you don't, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk to you. And I kind of put that ultimatum down. And there were other issues. My dad he's never really put a lot of weight in morality. And, he just kind of believes that lying is okay, especially, when you're dealing with kids. He started watching my son, my kid's mother, and we would let our oldest go up and stay with him. It was great. It was kind of a great support initially, but my son had really bad asthma, almost died from an allergy reaction to cat dander, had breathing issues. My dad had a cat and he smoked cigarettes. And we just said, look, you cannot smoke cigarettes in the car with my son. You can't. Just do that for us. Please do that. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Well, it turned out he was smoking in the car with them and just doing whatever he wanted to do. He did not respect our decisions. So early on, there became a lot of animosity between my ex, my kid's mother, and my dad. And who am I going to stand up for? Who am I going to support? Am I going to support my dad in that situation, or am I going to support my wife and the mother of my children? Well, of course I'm going to support my wife and the mother of my children. Well, all these years go by, and in these last few years, or actually this last year and a half, I kind of wanted to put things back together with my dad. And I kind of associate, when you have a movie or something that just kind of hits home, this is what I kind of associate me trying to put my relationship back together with my dad to really try to get to him. And I'll show you. Here it is. Oh, is it not going to work? Oh, are you kidding me? The end plug is not going to work. This can't be the case. All right, let's see if it works this time. Okay, here we go. This is literally the movie. Oh, no, that's not it. This is it. This is me and my dad like a year and a half ago. See, I made a big mistake. Just like Luke made a mistake in Star Wars, thinking that he's going to really just give that love to his father. And his father's going to pull off the mask and be like, "You're right, Luke. I am Anakin Skywalker." I thought that could happen. I thought if I give him that love, if I tell him that I love him, then maybe, he's going to come back from where he's at. Nope. It is not possible. He's now drinking. He'll probably be gone. He started drinking. I mean, he got remarried, or he tried to get remarried to a woman that he met, I think, on a dating website. And he spent all kinds of money on her. They traveled around the world. She was a flight attendant. So he was like, "This is perfect. She's got a big nest egg." He's probably mad at me because I told his then girlfriend, "Hey, don't give him access to any money ever, 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 ever." I was not going to see another woman go down by allowing him to manage or have access to their money. And it is what it is. I felt like I needed to protect her. Well, she ended up doing a lot of damage to him. She ended up not wanting to marry him, which I don't fault her for. He's not a very interesting guy. He's very self-absorbed. He's extremely narcissistic, but covert narcissistic. And it wasn't until I confronted him as Luke Skywalker, kind of the final thing, "Look, let's put this back together. We're all we got. Mom's dead. Your parents don't, even acknowledge you," which I never figured out why. But he's just gone. He's now drinking every day, gambling every day, literally gets, kind of a retirement from the company he worked for, and he spends every dime every month on just gambling. Doesn't want to see his grandkids, doesn't care. And that's what happens when toxicity takes over. And we got to get out of it. All of my focus now, after my second marriage, which I thought I'd found my soulmate. I literally thought I'd found the person that I was destined to be with. I mean, that's what it felt like. I was in love like you can't even believe. Got married in Vegas, had a great wedding. she had a college degree, this close to her PhD. She was running a business, truffle management business. We were going to travel, manage truffle orchards. I was the perfect fit for what she needed to do to grow that business. It could have easily been one of the greatest relationships in history, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because I wasn't realistic. Maybe I was a little too confident. Maybe I was too confident in, I know I can make this work. I know I can make this work. And there was a video here. Well, looks like all my videos didn't work. We'll get better at this. Sometimes you just think, have you ever been in that relationship where you just go, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to take the abuse. I'm just going to take it. Now, remember when I said that I wasn't really sure about, I never knew who a Democrat was and I never knew what my friends' parents or what my friends' political affiliations were, what anybody believed, politically. We never talked about that. It was never part of life. It was never part of our discussions. We didn't care. It was you judge a person by their character and by their behavior and by their, their how they treat you. That's how I've always judged everybody. How are you to me? How are you when we are together? And there was so much more of that just even 6 years ago. 2015 was kind of the end of that. And that's how we should judge one another. That's how we should look at things. I had no idea. Political affiliation, well, this woman that I met, her family was from Napa, California. All Democrats. I remember going home to meet her mom for the first time and, her stepdad. And they're like, you probably shouldn't tell them you're a Trump supporter. I remember her telling me this on the way into the house. I'm like, I'm not a Trump supporter. You're still getting it wrong. I am not a Trump supporter. I'm only a Trump supporter because I despised Hillary freaking Clinton. I thought she was a liar. I thought she treated Bill horribly. And I was right. Listen to the stories. There's a couple of people who were really close to a lot of things, Bill and Hillary, during that administration, and she did not treat him well. She treated him horribly. And she still did. And that is what I was like, no, I can't vote for that woman. I voted for Ross Perot in 92, and damn it, I'll vote for Trump, even though I didn't even vote in 2015 because I was so busy. I'll do the same thing. What's the harm? What's the harm in Trump? Well, I had no idea that there was this massive hatred towards this person in such a manner that it was going to spark this national emergency and this release of a pandemic and all of these changes that just made everybody's lives miserable. I had no freaking idea. Just like I'm sure a lot of you had. Right? God, I guess we do have a few people in the chat, or did. I have no idea if there's anybody even watching. You know what they say? Perform like you're performing to a big audience. That's the beauty of these things. You can go back and watch them again. Maybe if I do get a following, people will just go back and watch the broadcasts. Who knows? So I go to meet her parents, and you better not tell them you're a Trump supporter. And I was like, I'm not a Trump supporter. Just let me handle it. And sure as shit, the first question they ask, we go in, we're sitting down, we're like, wow, you guys are moving pretty quick, whatever, blah, blah. And her stepdad, who at one time, trust me, one time in the 80s was the biggest cocaine dealer in all of Northern California. In fact, his character, the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, there was a character in that movie that the rumor is was my ex's stepfather. That's how big of a cocaine dealer he was. So my wife, my second wife now, not my kid's mother, had to deal with a lot of trauma when she was a kid. And then I soon figured out, well, no, actually. So when he says, so do you support Trump or do you support Hillary? And I remember, or no, this was 2018. He said, so are you a Trump supporter? And I went, well, not necessarily. I didn't vote because of one thing or another, but I didn't like Hillary Clinton, and here's the reason why. And I just remember him going, oh. And he looks over at my then girlfriend, not my wife yet, looks at her mother, and her mother just went, oh, Jimmy, shut up. So didn't think anything of it. Didn't think anything of it at all. Had a big wedding, lots of people, met all of her friends. There was nothing, it wasn't any different than meeting any friends I've met in the past. But when that ends, maybe it's a Democrat thing. I don't know. I mean, the only reason I'm thinking maybe it's a Democrat thing is because I saw what happened to Trump by the Democrats, all the lawfare and the trying to put him in jail and the accusing him of this and that and blah, 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 blah. Like that, when I had to ask for a divorce and I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit too much to handle. When I had to do that, then all hell broke loose on me the same way. Her sister tried to destroy me. They accused me of violence. They accused me of being domestic violence. Cops. It was just surreal. Now, why did that happen? Well, it obviously happened to make her look like a victim. And if she's a victim, then I guess she doesn't take any blame or anything. Nobody was blaming her. Even our therapist, we had a therapist who was from the area, and she warned me. She's like, look, you guys are getting divorced now. Don't be in the same house with her. Don't be, like, you got to have witnesses. And even then, I was just like, what are you talking about? This, like, isn't going to go crazy. But it did. And it did, and I didn't see it. And I was set up. It was like out of a playbook. Out of a freaking playbook. That has got to stop. If we do not stop this behavior and the treatment of people like we're treating people and the gaslighting and the accusations and the hypocrisy, if we don't stop that, our kids are going to just perpetuate it and continue it. It's going to keep going. We got to break the freaking cycles of trauma. We got to break that toxicity. We got to break that acceptance of just making a person, dehumanizing people because you have a difference of opinion. It's okay to get a divorce and not have it be a massive, big deal. Like, oh, well, it's a divorce. You're not with each other anymore. Sure, it sucks. Sure, it hurts, whatever. But why all the games? Why all the lawfare and BS? I didn't realize how much of it there was until I started seeing, other friends. Like, what is happening? Oh, it's happening to you. Oh, it's happening to you. And then the one thing that saved my life when I came back, now, after my restraining order and all that BS I went through, go back and listen to the other podcast if you're curious. If you haven't heard this story, it's a couple episodes ago. I think it's what happened to me the last 10 years. After I got back, the only thing, I literally came home from California because I went down there to get the restraining order dropped. I was like, there's no way I'm going to keep this restraining order. I couldn't buy a gun. I couldn't even go pick up my guns that I had at a pawn shop to pay her bills. It was sickening. And so I went down there, spent a year down there, got in another car accident. This was during COVID. Everything was locked down. I came back escaping, running away. I had to kind of sneak out in the middle of the night. It was that bad. When I saw Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's trial and saw what he was fighting back, it saved my life. It literally saved my life watching him fight for that because I felt isolated. I felt like, wow, everybody just turned their back on me because I'm a Trump supporter. quote unquote, never was. But the whole reason everybody was treating me as a Trump supporter or an abuser of women was so they could steal my mom's estate and my aunt could steal my grandparents' estate. So I wouldn't have a voice. They justified not giving me any support out of the family because I was supposedly a Trump supporting domestic abuser. That's not going to happen to my kids. It's not going to happen to my kids because my kids, I'm going to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years, however long it is, and make sure that they understand how to be emotionally and mentally fit for life. And with all the changes that are coming up with AI, what I think is going to be a massive market correction, like one that'll make 2006 to 2008 look like a quiet fart in church. This upcoming market correction is going to, if 06, 07, 08 was a quiet fart in church, what I think is coming is going to be like that huge, like, dump your pants, unbelievable. It's going to be big. It's going to be big and it's going to be hard. And we've not seen the end of this. And we have a lot of more crap to make it through. I hope this all made sense. Boy, I did a poor job of like doing the whole video. I need to find a director at some point. When we get out of here, I am going to build a studio somewhere else. Haven't figured it out yet. I only got, I got 20 days to get out of here. If anybody has any ideas, help me out. There's going to be a lot more. I got a lot more to do with this. I've got a project. I'm going to use my skills and my experience in finance, in the golf business, in aviation to do something that's going to take advantage of the new economy going forward. And hope to make a fair amount of money in doing so. But now I don't have to buy houses and pillows and couches and fancy trips and all this other ancillary stuff. The kids are almost grown up. No more relationships, no more wives, no more. It's just me and my dog. And now we're going to do some fun stuff because now I don't have to buy all that stuff. Now I can put everything into what I want to get accomplished and the legacy I want to leave. That's why I'm doing this now. So what do we do? What do we do? All we can do is keep talking. All right, everybody, have a happy Sunday. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Both my kids think that the Kansas City Chiefs are a lock because the refs cheat because they want Patrick Mahomes to take Tom Brady's record? I guess we'll find out. So enjoy the game. Enjoy your time with the family. We'll catch you the next one. Please subscribe, follow, like, comment. I don't care if you comment, just smash the keyboard. I got to break through the algorithms. YouTube is still suppressing me. Help